Dear students, I welcome you all to this lecture on Karl Marx's view on capitalism. The main objectives of this lecture are to outline Karl Marx's contribution to the understanding of capitalism, to understand his theories and concepts pertaining to capitalism, to highlight the problems associated with capitalist system, to explain the various methods of capitalist exploitation, and to trace the economic process as a driver of social change. The ideas and writings of German philosopher, economist, and political theorist Karl Marx are best known as the cornerstone of contemporary communism as well as socialism. Historical materialism, alienation, surplus value, class conflict, and the vision of a communist society are among his most important ideas. His well known works include Das Kapital, which is a seminal work, and the Communist Manifesto. In simple terms, Marx believed that the conflict between various social classes and their struggle for control of the means of production were the primary forces behind the historical development of humanity. Marx argued that capitalism, which is characterized by class conflict and private ownership of the means of production, will eventually result in a proletarian revolution. He thought that this revolution would produce a classless society where the means of production will be owned collectively and which would result in the withering away of the state. Numerous philosophers, economists, sociologists, and political scientists have contributed to the critique or understanding of the capitalist system in a simple and layman's language. Adam Smith, Thorstein Veblen, John Maynard Keynes, and John Stuart Mill are a few of them. Many of these thinkers advocated for reforming the capitalist economic system in their writings. Marx's theories, on the other hand, revealed how capitalism functions in contemporary societies and offer not only an understanding of how it works, but also a radical and revolutionary critique of the entire capitalist system. At the same time, he foresees and puts forth communism as a different, more equitable, just, and ideal socio-economic system. Marx believed that social organization is a reflection of the economic structure of the society and connected social structure to the material powers of production in a society. The relationships between producers, workers, and consumers make up this economic structure, and these relationships then form the social relations. As a result, the real foundation upon which the legal and political superstructures are erected and to which specific forms of social consciousness are related is the economic structure of the society. The general nature of social and political processes in life is determined by the mode of production in the material world. Hegel thought that man's social being is determined by his consciousness, whereas Marx thought it's the other way round. That is, a man's consciousness is determined by his social being. As this pattern of social organization takes shape, the material forces of production in a society clash with the pre existing relations of production. In other words, as the gap widens, class conflict will inevitably result. It is clear that Marx's main areas of interest were society as a whole, and more specifically, the process of social change. Political economy, which examines the social and economic structure of a society, is important not just for its own sake, but also because it helps us understand the impetus for social change. Marx, it is frequently claimed, reduced everything to economic terms. That is, all social and political change originated from the economic system. However, it is deceptive. Marx was instead simply looking for the relationship between the economic and the non economic aspects of social existence. He emphasized the role that economic factors play in influencing social change, but he avoided being overly deterministic about it. After he made the supposition that the modes of production hold the key to social change, Marx began a thorough investigation of political economy. In order to accomplish this, he attempted to reveal the laws and patterns that led to changes in the mode of production. He spent his entire life working on this project as he sought to lay bare the economic law of motion of modern society. Hegel's ideas that explained process and development through the struggle of opposing or contradictory forces were carried over by Marx. However, unlike Hegel, he recognized that historical conflicts were rooted in the mode of production, which led him to identify them as what he termed as class conflicts. The Communist Manifesto's famous opening statement expresses it aptly. The history of all hitherto existing society is the history of class struggles. The bourgeois and the proletariat, also known as the haves and the have nots, were, in his opinion, the two major classes that faced off in society as a whole. For Marx, the dialectical conflict between these two classes has shaped and will continue to shape human history. Now we will discuss Marx's theory of surplus value. Marx's theory of surplus value is a key idea in his critique of capitalism and offers important insight into how capital is accumulated and how labor is exploited in this system. Marx stated that every commodity has a dual aspect, that of use value and exchange value. A commodity is not special in any way other than having use value. Every age and every type of society has consumable items that have some sort of use value. Use value expresses a particular relationship between the consumer and the consumed object. It is outside the purview of political economy because political economy is a social science that deals with interpersonal relationships. Use value, or what is now referred to as utility, was not included by Marx in the study of political economy because it does not directly personify a social relation. He strictly enforces the requirement that economic categories must be social categories, that is, categories that reflect interpersonal relationships. On the other hand, exchange value is a quantitative relationship between things or between the commodities themselves. So, in what sense is it a social relation and an appropriate topic for a political economist to study? Marx's response to this query is the foundation of his labor value theory. Exchange value, the quantitative relationship between things that we refer to, is merely the outward expression of the social relationship between the owners of the commodities or the producers themselves. The exchange relationship as a whole is a manifestation of the fact that private owners and producers are actually working for the benefit of each other. Their labor has a social character that is imprinted in the act of exchange. In other words, the exchange of commodities involves the transfer of goods made through the labor of private producers. Therefore, the fact that the commodities in question are the results of human labor in a society based on division of labor where producers work privately and independently finds expression in the form of exchange value. It is, however, crucial to distinguish between capitalism and commodity production in general. Any item that satisfies human needs and is created by human labor with the intention of exchange is referred to as a commodity. Therefore, analyzing commodities also entails analyzing exchange relations and their exchange value. Although capitalism is viewed as a form of commodity production, not all forms of commodity production imply capitalism. Under capitalism, products are transformed into commodities. In fact, the emergence of capitalism requires a great expansion in the production of commodities. Under simple commodity production, each producer owns and uses his own means of production, but under capitalism, ownership of the means of production belongs to one group of people, while the work is carried out by a different group. Consequently, the owner and the worker are two separate groups. Additionally, however, labor power and means of production are both turned into commodities or considered as exchangeable goods, which means they both carry a value in the market. Therefore, the capital labor relationship is an exchange relationship. The worker sells his labor to the capitalist, who then pays him with money with which he can buy his daily necessities. As a result, not only do relationships among owners have the nature of an exchange relationship, but also relationships between owners and non owners. The former is a characteristic of all commodity production, whereas the latter is a unique feature of capitalism. Therefore, we can claim that the unique characteristic of capitalism is the buying and selling of labor power. As Marx articulated it, the historical conditions of its existence are by no means given with the mere circulation of money and commodities. It can spring into life only when the owner of the means of production and subsistence meets in the market with the free laborers selling this labor power, and this one historical condition comprises a world's history. Capital, therefore, announces from its first appearance a new epoch in the process of social production. In simple commodity production, the producer sells his good in order to buy other goods that meet his particular needs. Beginning with commodities, he transforms them into money before returning the money to the market by buying more commodities. The fact that the final commodities differ qualitatively from those used as raw materials serves as the basis for this transaction, which begins and ends with commodities. Marx uses the symbol CMC to denote this circuit. Contrarily, in capitalism, the capitalist enters the market with money, purchases commodities, which is the labor and the means of production, and after going through a process of production, emerges from the market with a commodity that he then exchanges for money once more. This circuit is framed as MCM. Money commences this process as well as completes it. Money is qualitatively homogeneous and does not satisfy any wants. So the CMC argument fails in this process. In fact, it is obvious that the entire process is useless if the amount of money at the beginning and the end are equal. Therefore, the capitalist cares most that the latter money is greater than the former. Here, the objective of production is the quantitative expansion of exchange value rather than the qualitative transformation of use value. In other words, a capitalist only invests in labor and means of production if doing so will allow him to increase his overall capital. Marx refers to this increment of money as surplus value. It is the difference between the money that was used at the beginning and the money that was acquired at the end. Therefore, surplus value is the extra value earned by the capitalist which is created by workers over and above the value of their wages. This surplus value is at the heart of how capitalists make money in a capitalist economy. It provides the capitalist with income and, as a result, causes a concentration of wealth. However, from where does this surplus value originate? It can be said clearly in a few sentences. The average worker produces more than they need for 1 day of subsistence in a day's work. As a result, there are two categories of work during the day: necessary labor and surplus labor. The result of necessary labor is given to the worker in the form of wages in a capitalist system, while the result of surplus labor is appropriated by the capitalist in the form of surplus value. It should be noted that necessary labor and surplus labor as such are phenomena that exist in all societies except the primitive ones, where productivity of human labor has increased above a certain minimum. In non-capitalist societies such as slavery and feudalism, a special class that maintains control over the means of production often appropriates the product of surplus labor. Thus, what makes capitalism unique is not the fact that one section of the population is exploited by another, but rather the form that this exploitation takes, namely the creation of surplus value. Because of the social historical fact of class division, that the means of production are largely the property of one class, the bourgeois capitalists are able to extract surplus labor from workers. This class has a significant bargaining advantage over a much larger class that can only work by selling their labor power for a wage that is less valuable than the value of their labor. Marx provides a materialist explanation for this historical fact by demonstrating how the concentration of means of production in the hands of a small number is the only way for them to be effectively employed and developed. Marx refers to capital invested in means of production as constant capital, or a capital C, and capital invested in labor power as variable capital, or capital V, because the former does not increase in value during the course of labor while the latter does. Marx refers to surplus value as the value produced by surplus labor, denoted by a capital S. The value of capital thus increases from V plus C to V plus C plus S as a result of this capitalist labor process. The constant goal of the capitalist is to increase his capital in order to produce more and more surplus value. By converting a portion of his surplus value into additional capital, he is able to earn more surplus value, which he then converts into additional capital and so on. This is the procedure that Marx conceptualizes as accumulation of capital, which serves as the engine for capitalist development. The identity of capitalist affects his social standing. He is a significant member of the society only insofar as he represents and owns capital. Without his capital, he would be worthless. The social status, position, prestige, and power of the capitalist are all measured in monetary terms. Therefore, accumulating more capital is the key to success in a capitalist society. As Marx noted, to accumulate is to conquer the world of social wealth, to increase the mass of human beings exploited by him, and thus to extend both the direct and the indirect sway of the capitalist. This is not it. In order to maintain this capitalist mode of production, the capitalist must continue to reproduce the means of production, which include, among other things, the technology and equipment needed to keep the production going. Production will continue to generate revenue as long as the equipment is upgraded and improved. Similarly, it is essential to maintain the physical health of the labor force and keep labor costs under control in order to maintain production. The number of workers keeps growing over time and more of them enter the production process. However, if their wages increase by an exponential amount, the system of capital accumulation and profit making may collapse. According to Marx, it is this collapse that is avoided by the reserve army of labor or the relative surplus population, which exerts pressure on the employed army of labor and thereby keeps the wages in check. In order to maintain a disengaged population or reserve labor, technological innovations are regularly introduced, which are less dependent on labor. Marx stated in the Communist Manifesto that the bourgeois cannot exist without constantly revolutionizing the instruments of production and thereby the relations of production, and with them the whole relations of society. Monopoly capitalism, in which the capitalist controls commodity prices, and imperialism, in which capitalist countries look for new markets, are inextricably linked to the theory of surplus value, accumulation of capital, and reproduction of the means of production. Like the traditional political economists, Marx foresaw a crisis in capitalism, but unlike them, he did not think it would succeed in breaking down capitalism. Technology advancements, the state's role in sustaining capitalism, the creation and control of new markets, and the constant presence of an army of reserve labor are just a few of the factors that help capitalism overcome any potential difficulties brought on by an economic depression. In addition to this crisis, the working class also faces alienation in the capitalist production process. Alienation from one's own labor, alienation from the product of one's labor, alienation from other workers, and alienation from the fundamental human nature. As a result of this, the workers will eventually usher in a revolution, or which Marx called the dictatorship of the proletariat, which will destroy the capitalist state and eventually establish a communist society. To sum up, Marx's thorough investigation and understanding of capitalism as an economic system that shapes and affects social relations is his greatest contribution. Understanding the economic system is essential for him as he considers the economic system to be the driver of social change. This is what sets Marx apart from traditional political economists and is also the significance of his work. His theories had a significant influence on political and economic thought, and they helped shape the Marxist and neo Marxist schools that are still providing an alternative to liberalism. Furthermore, his ideas have served as a practical inspiration for numerous socialist and communist movements all over the world. With this, we conclude today's lecture. Hope you benefited from listening to it. Thank you.